Have you checked out the Patreon page lately? I recently gave it a dust up. We still have the tip jar for those who love the show and want to help it grow. There's also the podcast archives, our most popular tier that gives you access to all of our episodes way back to the first episode. For super fans who like to make big magic, I'll be sharing future ebooks and courses as I'm creating them in real time. You'll find that page. It is at patreon.com/adultingwithadhd. The Adulting with ADHD podcast is not a substitute for medical advice. Please see a medical professional if you think you have ADHD or if you have questions about your current treatment. To support this podcast or to access the podcast archives, visit patreon.com/adultingwithadhd. This is the Adulting with ADHD podcast, self-empowerment for people with ADHD. I'm very excited today to be talking with Laura Forde. She's an entrepreneur based out of London, owner of Sonus Crystals, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about how her business was born amid perimenopause and COVID at the same time, which sounds fantastic. How are you doing, Laura?
It is. I'm doing really well, and thank you so much for inviting me to share on this podcast today. I really appreciate it. It's lovely. Thank you.
Oh, yes, you're very welcome. I guess to start, you want to tell us a little bit about your diagnosis story?
I'm sure this is every adult's story of ADHD. I always knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. I'd worked hard in school to attain fairly good grades, but not amazingly great. So I finished my schooling, I went to college, I went to university, and I got a BA Honours in Design. And I started working in the professional sector after I graduated and moved back down to London. And I think things got progressively worse. I was in a job that I absolutely adored for 7 years. And that was within the natural stone industry. And unfortunately, I was made redundant. And from that time onwards, things just seemed to get worse and worse. Now, anyone with ADHD will always be aware of when your line manager or boss pulls you to one side, but the chat usually compromised of words and phrases like, if you could just slow down, you seem to be missing out on details. You're a very good worker, but, that became the narrative of my professional life. And so, therefore, it catapulted me into this state of anxiety, perpetual anxiety and fear and low moods because of it. That was the narrative of my life. It was job loss after job loss. It just became part of me. It was like, how am I going to mess up now? When am I going to be called in for the chat? I think it was 2019. We had a death in our family, and my then line manager Tim sat down with me for what I perceived to be the chat. So I was very anxious and guarded, and he said, I've noticed a few things. And I was really careful how I articulated the next sentence. I said, is this in relation to my work specifically? And he said, no, Laura, it's in relation to you as a person. At that point, I knew I was in a safe space to share. And I told him that when I wake up in the morning, I've got 2 brass bands going off in my head. And he talks to me, then I drop out of conversation. If somebody gives me all direction for how to get from A to B, there is absolutely no way I'll remember that. If you introduce me to your new friend, I will never remember their name. Go into a restaurant, I can hear the conversation on the other table, I can hear the cooks in the kitchen, and sometimes I have to sit opposite and lip read the persons or people I'm out with. That's how it manifested in me. And I just thought that was true of everyone, right?
Yeah.
But what happened was I was referred to a counsellor through human resources in the last company I worked for. You said something, I think you might have ADHD. Now, like most people, ADHD meant for me personally, little boys with too many E numbers jumping on mummy's sofa. I had no other grasp of ADHD other than that's what I thought it was too. And so I went to my doctor and I asked if I could get a referral. Unfortunately, the referral list in this country is astronomically long. It was like 3 years, a 3-year waiting period.
Wow.
To see under the NHS. So I decided to go private. I couldn't cope anymore.
Yeah.
And I went to the Nightingale Clinic in London and I met a doctor. Just see if I pronounce his name right, Dr. Oiwale. And I sat down and told him my story. I was then given a diagnosis of predominantly ADHD inattentive, and I was trialled on medication. And from that moment on, it just changed the whole trajectory of my life. My whole life changed. It was the big aha moment. It was like my life flashed upon my eyes, and I was like, now I get it.
Yeah.
If you speak to any adult that has been diagnosed with ADHD, I guarantee you the first feeling they will feel is relief. Relief that they're not stupid. Relief that they're not going mad. Relief that they're not less than, when everything and everyone points at you are less than. So I was trialled on a stimulant medication, which helps me with my cognitive function. It was a game changer. It was the missing piece to my jigsaw.
Yeah.
It was that. It's like putting on a new pair of glasses. You see those little videos on Facebook when the school teacher clubs together with all the kids in class and he puts on his glasses where he can see colour for the first time. Yeah. It's exactly as that.
Yeah. Completely relating to all of this. As you said, it's a common story. I totally relate. I still feel like I'm getting away with something. Like, what's the catch? When's the shoe going to drop? This is too easy. It couldn't be this obvious.
Yeah, it couldn't be this obvious. Correct.
I'm going to divert a little bit from the questions, if I may. I'm curious. Yeah. Okay, so when was your diagnosis?
Let's see. I think it was September 2019.
Fairly recent.
Newly diagnosed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had ups and downs so far, or are you still in that, oh my gosh, this is amazing period, or have you had speed bumps?
I think everyone has speed bumps, and we have life and life's terms, don't we? We're going to have and trials and tribulations along the way, but at least I know what's wrong and I can do something about it.
Precisely.
In itself is the biggest revelation of all. So no matter what happens, I know I'm going to be okay because I know what's wrong with me. So
that's so powerful. Yeah. Just the pause right there. That's so powerful, I think, because I was diagnosed several years ago, and I know in the beginning, it was like, hallelujah, it's been fixed. They fixed me. There seems to be a lot of literature out there based on fixing people. And so I love your approach, which is, this is who I am, and knowing that makes all the difference.
Of course, of course. It's, just because I'm taking a medication doesn't mean I'm ADHD free.
Right.
ADHD, it's how I choose to work with what I've got. So I'll always have trials and tribulations, whether it be directly related to ADHD or indirectly. That makes no odds to me. At least I know what I'm dealing with. It makes the playing field fair.
Yeah. So how do the hormones fit into this? Because I know some people, when they hit certain lulls in their cycle, it's like their medicine's not even working. Did you have that experience at all?
Yes, in terms of how it played out in relation to COVID and perimenopausal or menopausal symptoms.
Yeah.
I had incremental uplifts in medication during COVID anyway, because my ADHD got worse. I think this is a common complaint for anyone. Yeah. That was the first thing. And the second thing, and it's probably one of the most significant for me, amongst other things, was brain fog.
Yeah.
Now, we already have issues, shall we say, with cognitive function. But if you're estrogen deficient and you have brain fog, it is absolutely, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Yeah. And so only was I experiencing quicksand in my head, I was having these awful mood swings that weren't really synonymous with me or who I was. I just couldn't understand it. And I went to the doctor and I said, I had mentioned it to the nurse before, and she said, it's just half the course for us ladies. And I was like, no, hang on for one hot second here. I've got ADHD. I need to know what's coming. I need to know what to do. It's not just the physical, it's the emotion. It's the very important, very important. Yeah. I was insistent to my GP, particularly as my ADHD had got worse. I said, you've got to help me. I need something. So I started a transdermal gel called estrogel. Mm-hmm. Now, hormones, menopause, and menopause is a big trending topic in this country. I don't know what it's like in America, but certainly here. And so we're getting a lot of support and a lot of coverage over it, which I think is wonderful, to be able to have that open conversation.
Yeah.
Has my ADHD got worse as a result of menopause? It didn't help, that's for sure. It further exacerbated what was already pre-existing.
Yes.
And the brain fog is really real. I'll give you some examples. Like, I remember one day I went to take my dinner out of the oven. I had my vegetables prepped, I had my alarm on my phone. I opened the oven. There's no dinner in the oven. So I'm thinking, oh my God. So I opened the fridge to realise there's nothing in the fridge either.
Oh my.
Yeah, really real. It for me personally, my experience of it is it can be so thick, it's like quicksand, that I cannot formulate one thought in front of the other at times, not all the time, at times. And that is both scary if you don't know it's perimenopause, and yeah, it's tough to deal with. It's tough to deal with for sure, but not impossible. Again, There is a solution. There is a solution. Speak to your doctor. And what I find really beneficial is journaling. Write everything down. Even if it's the smallest of tasks. Put on a laundry, go for a walk, make a coffee. Because you can refer back to it and say, what have I done today? You know? Yeah. And that's great.
Yeah.
A little tip every morning is fantastic. I think doing a gratitude list every single day is an amazing thing.
I hear that a lot. I get that one.
Yeah.
I always go back to
every day. Always a gratitude list. Start off your day in gratitude. And I tell you, I believe it reprograms our neural pathways so that we look at things from a completely different perspective.
I've heard that from so many different sources that there's got to be truth to it. I have so many different people say that. Yeah.
Yeah, really important. Really, a gratitude list. And once you start, you won't be able to stop writing small things, you know. Yeah. I'm glad to have a roof over my head and food on my belly. I'm glad to wake up in a clean bed. I'm glad for my sanity today.
Yeah, the awareness of my ADHD.
Awareness, sure. Yeah, sure. So once you know what the problem is, you work on the solution, don't you? You try and find a solution to that problem. So
yeah. Something that's brought me comfort is just knowing that there is affordable private online therapy available anytime and anywhere through BetterHelp. And I just found it to be way more convenient and way more in line with how I prefer to communicate. There's ways to communicate through email, through chat, through phone, whatever is easier for you. And listeners of the Adulting with ADHD podcast can save 10% off their first month today if they sign up. To take advantage of this deal, go to BetterHelp.com/ADHD adulting. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/ADHD adulting. So tell me a little bit about your business and how that got started.
I had been furloughed last year for a number of months. The last company I worked for was in Kensington. In London, I was an office manager, and I really loved the job. It was absolutely lovely. And unfortunately, as an office manager, I didn't have an office to manage as people weren't going in and out of the office. Yeah. So eventually I was made redundant last year. Now, during that time of being in furlough, I got quite involved in meditation and mindfulness and journaling and just being aware of what was going on, who was around me, and trying to help another person. That was my objective for last year. And I was so fortunate to be able to do that. And so when I was made redundant, although I was sad because I really loved the job and I loved the people, he gave me a choice. He forced my hand in a strange sort of way. So I began to journal. I was like, what do you want to do? I absolutely knew that I would not go back to work in the traditional sense of the word, as in a 9-to-5 bums on seat kind of situation. That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And I knew that. So I thought to myself, what can I do? And maybe I should open an eBay account. That might be nice. I didn't have a PayPal account. I knew nothing about eBay, absolutely nothing. Everything I learned about business, I learned through YouTube, you see.
Nice.
I'm a visual person. I learn visually. You can't tell me something because I won't retain the information. But if you show me, that's cool. And so what I did was collated all of my old, really nice dresswear that I had collected over the years and began to list it on eBay and then begin to sell. Now, the reason I got into crystals specifically is because I had worked in the natural stone industry for years. So I'd always been interested in stone. I know it sounds boring, but I was interested in the colour, where it came from, what the properties were. And I happened to be watching a YouTube video. I seen this woman's beautiful collection of crystals. I'm like, oh my God, they're beautiful. That's it. That's what I want to do. That is what I want to do. And so what I did was raise money by selling beautiful dresses that I'd only worn once for an occasion, for a mixed condition. And I created a small inventory and I researched everything. I looked for suppliers, I looked for wholesalers, I looked at how to create a business, I looked at what I needed to do. So I did everything from scratch on my own. I learned how to design Instagram content. I learned about algorithms, tags, everything.
That's incredible.
Everything. Yeah. So I'm really blessed, and I really hope that maybe one woman, one lady, one person today sees or hears this podcast and goes, do you know, maybe, just maybe, even if it's just a side hustle, it's so inspiring, it's so empowering. And that's what I'm all about that. Uplift and encourage. Empower, uplift. If you can't help another person, then please don't hurt them. That's what it's about. Sonos Crystals was born out of that idea. Sonos is Gaelic, is Irish. It means happy or happiness. Mm-hmm. That was my journey to Sonos, to where I am now. Happiness. I created a little online Etsy shop, and here I am, an entrepreneur. You know, when you introduced me as an entrepreneur, I felt imposter syndrome. I was like, you're not talking about me at all.
I saw that. And I said it and I meant it. I was like, yes, you are. It's such a short span of time. You educated yourself on so many different things when you think about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's marketing, algorithms, everything. You're doing it all.
Yeah. It's amazing. And that's for anyone with ADHD. I would suggest, even if you don't even know what you want to do, just write something in a journal, start a spider diagram. Anything, a noise, a sound, a colour, anything. What are you interested in? Is it gardening? Is it shopping? Is it knitting? Do you like painting? Do you like poetry? Just start and you see what happens. It's amazing.
Wow.
Absolutely. We're deeply empathic people, ADHDers. We really are. We're very sensitive. We're very creative. So that would be my advice to any lady, particularly if ever there was a time to start a business, it's now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's now.
You said you knew you weren't going to go back to the workplace. Do you feel like that has a lot to do with your ADHD, or is that just your personality, or both?
It's completely to do with ADHD. Yeah. It's completely.
Same here.
It's just like a panic attack waiting to happen. Say, for example, I'd lost many jobs over the years. So if I hear or if I read narrative like super fast-paced, dynamic environment is looking for someone to hit the ground running to support a team of 5 directors, I'm like, okay, there's a breakdown waiting to happen. That's not going to happen. Do you see? Exactly. Hit the ground running. Oh, no, that's a no for me, I'm afraid.
I know. I get the same feeling when I read job ads. It's like anxiety-inducing. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's very triggering. So like corporate or 9-to-5 job equals anxiety, low mood, feeling less than, always in fear, worrying, because I kept on making mistakes. I couldn't understand why I had a degree education, but I couldn't send an email without having a grammatical mistake in it. It made no sense.
Yeah. Totally relate to that. Laura, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so inspiring, even as someone who I was laid off in 2018 and started my own business. I'm
Well
so
done,
inspired.
congratulations.
I'm so inspired hearing your story. It just makes me want to do
Aw,
more. It's like, oh,
yeah, you can and you will.
yeah.
Yeah, anyone. And this is anyone with ADHD. You can do anything you want to once you put your mind to it. Just, you know what we're like. Once we find something we like, we become hyper-focused and we're on
You
it.
can't even stop us, even if you wanted to.
Can't stop us. We'll stay up half the night, but it was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Where can we find your store
Yeah.
on eBay? What's your website?
Okay. So I'm on Etsy, and the name of the business is called Sonos Crystals. I'm just going to show you a quick card. I don't know if anybody else can see it. Can you see that?
A little bit, yeah.
It's not great.
Mhm.
So Sonos, spelled Sonas, and then crystals. Yeah, Sonos Crystals. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I am on Pinterest. I'm on eBay. And my shop is on Etsy. So I would welcome anyone. And I'm not saying buy something, that's not necessary. But even if you just follow me on Instagram and Facebook, that would be a huge help. I'm not pushing you to buy from me, but it will help my algorithm and it helps other people see my shop and my work.
Awesome.
So if anyone's listening to this and they've got something from this or they feel inspired or empowered, please just follow me here.
Excellent. Laura, thank you again for being on the show. And I'm going to go right now and go follow you on all the socials.
Bless you. You're so beautiful.
Thank you. Take care. Hey guys, I'm here to ask a little favor. So, in order to grow the podcast even more, it's come to my attention that I should probably survey you guys to get a better idea of who's actually listening and what you guys want and what you don't want. If you could, pretty please, go to adultingwithadhd.com/survey. It would help me immensely to have this information, not just for myself as I'm creating content, but for any potential partners who may want to help grow the show. I would like to find people who are exactly right for you guys. Thank you very much, and until next time, happy adulting.